Teeds House in Baltimore. These preseason games and the practices in the aftermath taking their toll on the Ravens as the injuries mount. But this week it is the Ryan Mallett Show Part 2, and we are headed down to Miami to take on the Dolphins at the beautiful Hard Rock Stadium. I've watched many baseball and many football games down there. I haven't seen it with the new little bra on the top. This guy's been covering the Dolphins for a long time. He also covers hockey down in South Florida, so I love having him on. He is the lead writer for Dolphins.com, but also covers the Florida Panthers down there for NHL.com. One of our defending champions. We welcome back Alain Poupart. He is A. Poupart Fins out on Twitter and running around with the Dolphins, which is totally a full-time job this time of the year, right, Elaine? I mean, no place where there's been more turmoil than there, right?
Well, you guys up in Baltimore have had your share as well. Yeah, there's been some stuff going on. Obviously, anytime you deal with a change in starting quarterback necessitated by an injury, that's big news, and of course the Dolphins had to go through that. But I think they made out pretty well in the final analysis by being able to sign Jay Cutler.
Well, I mean, look, you've seen his act in Chicago. I've seen it. I've said here, well, I'm kind of glad he's not my quarterback on certain days, and I don't think he's going to win any press conferences, although somehow he has this amazing ability to break down football for broadcasters. I mean, the broadcast teams were in love with him as a commentator, but he doesn't give a good press conference, and the body language quotient is not there. But I would think beneath all of that is an incredible desire one more time to sort of fire up the band with a guy he knows, in an offense he knows, with a team that feels like it's trending in the right direction, but that's more for you to say. You're watching them.
No, and here's the one thing I would tell you right off the bat is I was kind of leery of how he would be in press conferences, because I've heard stories and the rumblings out of Chicago that he's kind of like a sourpuss in press conferences. He's done about 3 or 4 things with us since signing with the Dolphins, and he's been absolutely great. I mean, he's very engaging. He's got a quick smile, very witty guy. Been very, very, very pleasant, and I can see very easily just how good of an analyst he can be once he goes down that road, once he's totally done with football, which he clearly wasn't, because when the Dolphins called him, he jumped at the opportunity to be reunited with Adam Gase, and there's a couple of factors involved there, in that the best season of his career in terms of passer rating was with Adam Gase. That one season they were together in Chicago in 2015. Know the system. The two guys get along very well. And here's something very important to remember, is Cutler was able to have that good year in 2015 in Chicago despite a ton of injuries at the skill positions that year, where they wound up finishing the season with a wide receiver core of guys who started were Josh Bellamy, Marquise Wilson, Eddie Royal. So, I mean, this is not what he has here in Miami where he has a really, really good threesome with Jarvis Landry, Kenny Stills, and Devontae Parker. So, building off of what he did, now I understand he didn't have great years the last 2 seasons, and he's a guy that you have to keep in check because he's got a cannon for an arm, and sometimes he gets himself in trouble and trying to fit the ball into tight windows. But this is where Gase came in 2015 and kind of reined him in a little bit, gave him the opportunity to make throws on the field and whatnot, but also stressed to him the importance of if it's not there, don't force it. The skill position players with the Dolphins, there are a lot of them, and there are a lot of good ones, along with the 3 wide receivers I mentioned. Julius Thomas is back with Adam Gase from their time back in Denver, where Thomas put up really big numbers when Denver had that ridiculous year in 2013 on offense. Julius Thomas was a big-time weapon. And they also have Jay Ajayi. He's coming off that breakout season last year. So he's got a lot of talent around him, much more so than he did in 2015 when he did have that good year. So I think the elements are in place for Jay Cutler to have a really, really good season, and for that offense really not to miss a beat despite having lost their starting quarterback.
Alain Poupart covers all things fish for the Dolphins.com website. You can follow his journey at A Poupart. That's Poupart, Fins, out on Twitter and running around with the Dolphins. And look, I don't need to tell you, you've seen a lot of mediocre to bad football. You've seen sort of weird coaching fits around there. You've seen that stadium get retrofitted 2 or 3 times now. I look at this depth chart, and I look at these players and the names here from a Bushrod who's got local roots here with Towson from many, many moons ago before he went to New Orleans. But you look up and down the roster from the Alonzos and the Sues and the Wakes and the Maxwells. I mean, there's a lot of pedigree going on here. I can see why you want a veteran quarterback to come in. There are some parts here that could say this team could win 10 or 11 games. I mean, and how Cutler responds to this in the coming weeks and takes to this offense and becomes a real leader, how much he's grown after getting kicked around in Chicago for the better part of a decade. This is an interesting story there under Gase, because I think Gase is a different kind of guy down there, right?
Oh, he has shown so far that every reason to believe the guy's just a tremendous coach, because he took a team last year. They started off 1-4. Were playing really poorly, and that fourth loss was against Tennessee, where they got smoked. And at a time when the season really looked like it was going nowhere, all of a sudden they upset Pittsburgh at home, and then they got on a roll, and they just found a way every week to come up with the big play when they needed it. And a big part of that was, sure, there's like some happenstance that it happens, like the stars align and you have one of those years where you just want to make in the plays. But more than that, Adam Gase is a guy who's very confident in his abilities, borderline cocky, but in a good way. And I think he instilled in his players that exact type of attitude to where no matter what happens, we're going to find a way. And along the way, the Dolphins have built up a roster where there is some talent in that roster. You mentioned and Ndamukong Suh, Cameron Wake, who had just a fabulous season coming off the Achilles injury that he sustained like 2 Octobers ago last year, made the Pro Bowl. Suh's a big-time player. Kiko Alonso made play after play after play at linebacker last year. Byron Maxwell got off to a really rough start, got benched, came back into the lineup, and by the end of the year before he got hurt, was playing what I would venture to say was Pro Bowl caliber cornerback. And then this year they upgraded a little bit with here and there. Namely, they went out and got Lawrence Timmons at linebacker to fortify a position that really needed some playmakers. And then they got Julius Thomas, who I mentioned earlier, at tight end, who's an upgrade over either Jordan Cameron or Deion Sims in the passing game. So there is a lot of talent there, which is why when Ryan Tannehill went down with that knee injury in training camp a couple of weeks ago, this wasn't a case of where, well, it's time to forget about the season. Let's think about 2018. First of all, that's not how Adam Gase thinks. Adam Gase thinks he's going to win regardless. And then, since it was pretty clear from the start that this was a bad injury and that Tannehill was pretty much looking at a lost season, the connection was just made too much sense. And then Jay Cutler, they're getting a starting caliber quarterback with Pro Bowl ability to take over a team that's got a lot of offensive weapons. So it was a great fit, and it keeps the Dolphins in a position where, again, they won 10 games last year, and I would venture to say they probably have more talent right now than they did at this time last year. So, again, a repeat certainly is within the realm of possibility.
It's a mess around here, right? I mean, we're playing with Mallet through the preseason, and I know for a lot of the veteran players, you don't want them out on the field anyway, but there is a sense of timing for a quarterback and getting together with wide receivers and such. What was the plan if Cutler wasn't willing to come back or just didn't want to do it, or Gase couldn't talk him into it, or, Cutler just decided to say, yeah, TV's right for me? What was the next plan, Alain?
Well, the next plan is they're going to explore other options. They're going to bring in another quarterback. That was without question. It would have been a veteran with some starting experience. They very well may have reached out to Colin Kaepernick, who's a very good quarterback and by talent alone definitely should be in the NFL. Now, the difference is, whereas Cutler came in pretty much with everybody understanding that he was going to be the starter, had they brought in somebody else, and I heard the name Christian Ponder being thrown out there as one guy they may have talked to, maybe even RG3, those guys would have come in and competed with Matt Moore probably the favorite to be the starting quarterback because he's a guy who can get the job done. I think in terms of pure athletic ability, it's Jay Cutler is probably a better quarterback, but Jay Cutler is a better quarterback in terms of ability than a lot of quarterbacks around the NFL. So there's no shame in saying that. So the plan would have been had Cutler turned them down. They would have gotten a veteran quarterback to come in with Matt Moore probably in line to be the starter.
We're going to see a lot of Cutler on Thursday night, or no?
My guess is we will see Cutler a lot. I doubt you're going to see a lot of Cutler. A couple of series would be my guess. But he wants to get in there. I am sure Adam Gase wants him to get a couple of snaps in some series with the first team offense. So I think he's going to get his feet in there for a couple of series, and then he'll probably get a full half, maybe even into the third quarter for that third preseason game, which is against Philadelphia the following Thursday.
Boy, these games stink, don't they, Elaine? I mean, it's awful. It's horrible, isn't
it? Yeah, and especially when what happened to the Dolphins last Thursday happens, which is that they lost their rookie second-round pick, Raekwon McMillan, who was in line to become the starting middle linebacker when the Dolphins were in their base, a guy who looked really impressive in training camp. And the first play he's on the field is covering a punt and blows out his knee after basically getting tangled up with one of his own teammates. So, yeah, not a huge fan of the preseason here. A lot of coaches like it because it's a better evaluation tool than practices, scrimmages, or even joint practices with other teams. But it's not necessarily the most entertaining spectacle to watch. And then there's always that danger of losing a significant player to an injury like the Dolphins had happened with McMillan.
Alain Poupart covers all things fish for Dolphins.com. He's the lead writer down there, as well as the editor of Dolphin Digest, as well as covering the Florida Panthers in his spare time in the evenings over there at the beautiful Sunrise facility. Listen, I mean, I'll talk to you about your hockey team and the Panthers, but you're an old-school hockey guy. I mean, are the Capitals ever going to win a Stanley Cup? I mean, seriously.
Well, yeah, you know what? I thought last spring was really their time.
Everybody says that.
I'm a believer in the law of averages, and you keep knocking on the door often enough, put themselves in a position like this, and at some point you got to break through. But now I'm almost wondering whether just the nucleus of their team lacks that one necessary ingredient to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, the Backstrom, Ovechkin core, I mean, the two guys who are insanely talented, but at some point you're going to have to start to wonder, you know what, maybe it's just not in the cards for those guys. I mean, their performance in Game 7, I mean, they took Pittsburgh to Game 7, but in that Game 7, I mean, they really didn't challenge. So
I liked Game 6 better. I liked the look on Coach Tomlin's face even more. But, yeah, man, it's been a long struggle with this Capital thing. I mean, it's a massive monkey on the backs of, I think, for all of our fans, and just thinking, like, maybe it's just not – because if it's not going to happen now, then when, right? I mean, but you look at, like, even the Broncos with Elway, all those years, even Peyton Manning, it took a long time, you know. It doesn't always happen right out of the gate and happen early for anybody. Hey, Matt Ryan's still chasing things. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there still giving chase. Marino, that always gets brought up down in Miami, of course, but the Ovechkin thing, this is going to stick to him, right? I mean, the greatest ever? Well, you can't be the greatest ever if you don't win, right?
Yeah, but I don't know that anybody ever thought he was the greatest ever. And that's the thing, is his path has been blocked by Sidney Crosby, who just happens to be just maybe a little bit better than Ovechkin. And push comes to shove. I mean, I don't want to make it a one-on-one battle, but again, maybe Pittsburgh just has more of that little bit of championship ingredient or it factor that's necessary, and that the Caps just lack. But I mean, look at. I mean, it's been set up for them. I mean, Game 7 at home.
I know.
You got to get it done. I mean, but again, there are a lot of teams who'd love to be in that position to be there every single solitary year with a chance. But the other thing that I'm not quite sure I would equate it to like football. I don't know that it's quite the same thing. And you mentioned Matt Ryan. Well, if the Falcons don't get a like brain freeze in their play calling, I mean, they would have won that game easily. But that's a different story entirely.
Yeah, well, they're talking about that every day in Atlanta, as they should. Elaine, always great to catch up with you, man. If I were going to go to lousy preseason football, I would do it with you in Miami, and I want to see the new stadium down there. But alas, it is the second preseason game, and it's bad enough on TV. I mean, honestly, right? So, I'll come to Miami when it's 12 here and 90 there. How about that?
You should do that, and you should definitely see that stadium. It's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, they have done such a nice job with that thing.
I wanted to come down and see you, too, during the summer because they were in there. But unless I'm there for a fish game, I won't make it. But, hey, who knows? Maybe the playoffs for both of these teams. But great having you on, as always. We'll be following your work at Apupar Fins out on Twitter as well as at Dolphins.com. Thanks, Elaine. Appreciate you, man.
Always, Nestor. You have a good one.
You got to keep the faith. He is Apupar. That's Poupart. Fins out on Twitter as well as at Dolphins.com and running around with the Panthers at NHL.com as well. I like the versatility of moving from hockey to football to baseball. Maybe do that around here a little bit as well. We're going to have some versatility this week, staying up late with the Orioles out in Seattle as well as the Ravens on Thursday night down in Miami taking on the Dolphins, and then a little bit of downtime before the game next weekend against the Bills here in town. Orioles coming back home this weekend as well. You can find me nasty at WNST.net anytime, anywhere. The Peter Principles Chapter 12 coming out this week. 10 and 11 came out last week, so if you're a little behind, go read. I have not had the pipes to sit and read chapters 9 through 12 yet, but I promise I shall, and I will get them to the buyatoyota.com audio vault along with all the rest of our content around here. It all sits there, everything I do all week long. You can listen to it on AM 1570 or go directly to the buyatoyota.com audio vault. Morning newspaper, 7 a.m. It delivers to your email inbox. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and planetfitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNST channel. Went to London last month to prepare for next month's Wembley journey. We are throwing a purple sky takeover on Saturday afternoon over the sky of London. We're going to turn it purple. All the details at WNST.net. You can throw me a note. We'd love to see you at our party at the Fox at XL on Saturday. We're doing a purple march at 2:52 to the Emirates Air cable car. It's going to be a fun time. So the announcement's there. I'm throwing it out on social media as well. If you're going to London or you know anyone going to London, tell them to join us on Saturday for some fun. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.